Imagine this for a moment. Right now, as you're watching this video, the Earth beneath your feet is moving faster than most airplanes ever will. At the equator, our planet spins at more than 1,600 kilometers per hour. You don't feel the motion, you don't hear it, you don't see it, and yet this silent, constant rotation shapes almost everything about life on Earth. From the length of a day to the direction of the winds, from ocean currents to the stability of the climate, Earth's spin is one of the invisible forces holding our world together. Now, ask yourself a disturbing question. What if all of that suddenly stopped? No warning, no gradual slowdown, no dramatic explosion in space. Just one instant where the Earth stops spinning and stays that way for the next 24 hours. At first, nothing might seem wrong. The ground wouldn't crack open, gravity wouldn't disappear, the sun would still shine in the sky. But physics doesn't care about appearances. Everything on the surface of the planet would still be moving eastward at incredible speed, carrying the momentum built up over billions of years. And the moment the Earth stops, that momentum has nowhere to go. In the first seconds, the effects would be violent and immediate. Buildings, trees, vehicles, and people would be thrown eastward. The faster you were moving with the planet, the harder the impact would be. Near the equator, the sudden stop would feel like hitting an invisible wall at supersonic speed. Entire cities could be flattened in moments, not by an explosion, but by pure inertia. The air itself would surge forward, creating winds far more powerful than any hurricane ever recorded, ripping across the surface of the planet. The oceans wouldn't stay behind. Water, once comfortably settled in basins shaped by rotation, would continue moving, slamming into continents with unimaginable force. Coastlines would vanish under massive walls of water, not as waves rising and falling, but as unstoppable floods racing inland. Maps would be rewritten in hours. Familiar landmarks would simply disappear. But here's the unsettling part. This destruction wouldn't be uniform. Where you are on Earth would determine your fate. Near the equator, survival would be nearly impossible. But closer to the poles, where rotational speed is much lower, the initial chaos might feel strangely muted. The planet would still be dangerous, but not instantly lethal. It would be a world of extreme contrasts, where some regions face immediate annihilation, while others experience a brief, eerie calm. As the hours pass, the planet would begin to reveal a different kind of threat. Earth's rotation doesn't just move us through space. It creates the rhythm of day and night. Without it, the sun would appear frozen in the sky. One side of the Earth would face constant sunlight, heating relentlessly. Temperatures would rise far beyond anything ecosystems are prepared to handle. The other side would be locked in endless darkness, losing heat rapidly, freezing under a sky that never sees the sun. Weather systems would collapse. The familiar patterns of wind and rain depend on rotation. Without it, storms wouldn't move the way they do now. Clouds could linger in place, dumping rain in one region while leaving another in permanent drought. The balance that distributes heat across the planet would fail, pushing environments past their breaking points. Even Earth's magnetic field could be affected. This invisible shield protects us from solar radiation and cosmic particles. If it weakens or destabilizes, radiation levels at the surface could rise, quietly adding another layer of danger to an already hostile world. Technology would struggle. Power grids, satellites, and communication systems would face failures just when humanity needs them the most. And throughout all of this, life would be forced to adapt or perish. Plants evolve for cycles of light and darkness. Animals rely on temperature stability. Humans depend on predictable environments. Remove Earth's rotation even for just one day, and you're not just changing the weather. You're rewriting the rules of survival. This isn't a distant, abstract scenario. Earth's spin is happening right now every second without us ever noticing. We build our cities, plan our days, and shape our civilizations assuming it will never stop. But imagining a world without that motion reveals how fragile our planet truly is. So today, let's walk through this nightmare together. What exactly would happen minute by minute if Earth stopped spinning for 24 hours? Where would survival even be possible? How much damage would be irreversible? And when the planet finally begins to spin again, would Earth still feel like home? Once the Earth has come to a complete stop, the first hour alone would permanently change the fate of the planet. The chaos caused by inertia would not be a brief shock, but the beginning of a cascade of disasters unfolding at different speeds across the globe. Near the equator, where rotational velocity was highest, the damage would be overwhelming. Entire cities would already be reduced to ruins, buried under debris carried by winds moving faster than any storm in recorded history. Farther from the equator, the destruction would be less immediate, but no region would truly be safe. As the planet settles into this unnatural stillness, gravity would continue to pull everything downward, but the balance created by rotation would be gone. Earth is not a perfect sphere. Its spin causes it to bulge slightly at the equator. When the rotation stops, this bulge would slowly disappear as the planet reshapes itself. The process would take time, but the oceans would respond much faster. Water that was once distributed by centrifugal force would begin migrating toward the poles, causing sea levels near the equator to drop dramatically while polar regions experience catastrophic flooding. Entire coastlines would be redrawn within hours. This sudden movement of the oceans would devastate marine ecosystems. Coral reefs, adapted to stable water levels and temperatures, would be exposed to air and sunlight, killing them rapidly. Fish populations would collapse as breeding grounds disappear. Coastal cities would either be swallowed by water or left stranded far inland, disconnected from the sea that once sustained them. Global trade, heavily dependent on shipping, would grind to a halt, triggering shortages of food, fuel, and essential goods almost immediately. Meanwhile, the atmosphere would undergo its own violent transformation. Earth's rotation is responsible for the Coriolis effect, which shapes wind patterns and allows weather systems to rotate and move. Without it, the atmosphere would behave in ways humanity has never experienced. Air would rush directly from hot regions to cold ones in massive, straight-line flows. Instead of moving storms, there would be enormous, stationary wind currents, some blowing continuously for days. In certain regions, these winds would strip soil from the ground, erode mountains, and turn once habitable land into barren wasteland. As the sun remains fixed in the sky, the division between day and night would become absolute. On the sunlit side of the planet, temperatures would rise relentlessly. Without the cooling relief of night, heat would accumulate hour after hour. Cities would become heat traps, with concrete and asphalt absorbing and radiating energy. Water reservoirs would evaporate faster than they could be replenished. Crops would initially struggle to survive under constant sunlight, but soon the heat stress would overwhelm them, leading to widespread agricultural failure. On the dark side of the Earth, the opposite extreme would unfold. With no sunlight at all, temperatures would drop rapidly. Within hours, frost would cover landscapes that have never experienced freezing conditions. Within a day, vast regions would resemble polar environments. Infrastructure designed for moderate climates would fail as pipes burst, roads crack, and power systems shut down. Plants would die without light, and animals dependent on warmth would succumb to the cold. Human survival during these 24 hours would depend heavily on geography and preparation. Regions near the poles might avoid the worst of the initial inertia, but they would face severe flooding and long-term climate instability. Underground facilities, insulated shelters, and access to reliable energy sources would become critical. Nuclear power plants might continue operating, but they would face serious risks if cooling systems failed due to disrupted water supplies or damaged infrastructure. Renewable energy would offer limited help, as solar power would only function on one side of the planet, while wind power would be dangerously unpredictable. Communication systems would be under immense strain. Satellites orbiting Earth rely on precise calculations based on a rotating planet. While their orbits would not immediately collapse, ground-based systems would struggle to track them accurately. Atmospheric disturbances and possible changes in Earth's magnetic field could interfere with signals, degrading GPS, navigation, and global communication networks. In a world already facing physical destruction, the loss of coordination would deepen the crisis. Radiation exposure would become another silent but serious threat. Earth's magnetic field, which shields life from harmful solar radiation, is generated by complex processes within the planet's core, influenced by its rotation. While the field would not vanish instantly, any weakening could allow increased levels of radiation to reach the surface. Over the course of 24 hours, this could damage electronics, increase cancer risks, and further stress ecosystems already pushed to their limits. As the hours pass, psychological effects would become increasingly severe. Humans are deeply adapted to the cycle of day and night. Our bodies rely on circadian rhythms to regulate sleep, hormones, and mental health. With the sun frozen in place, these rhythms would be shattered. Time itself would feel distorted. Panic would spread as people realized that familiar patterns no longer exist. Misinformation would flourish, and social order in many regions would begin to break down. Emergency services, already overwhelmed by physical disasters, would struggle to respond. Governments would face impossible decisions, unable to prioritize one crisis over another because everything would be happening at once. Food shortages, mass displacement, and medical emergencies would escalate rapidly. Even regions that initially escaped severe damage would feel the pressure as global systems collapse. By the end of the 24-hour period, Earth would be fundamentally altered. Coastlines reshaped, ecosystems destroyed, and human infrastructure crippled. Even if the planet were to suddenly resume its rotation, the damage would not simply reverse. Flooded regions would not instantly drain. Frozen areas would not immediately thaw. Lost species would not return. The scars left by just one day of stillness would remain for generations. Yet, life on Earth is remarkably resilient. Some organisms, particularly extremophiles living in deep oceans, underground, or in extreme environments, might survive relatively unscathed. These forms of life have endured past mass extinctions and could persist long after surface ecosystems collapse. Humanity, though vulnerable, might also survive in pockets, adapting to a world that no longer behaves as it once did. This thought experiment reveals a profound truth about our planet. Earth's rotation is not a background detail of existence. It is a foundational force that shapes every aspect of life. We rarely notice it because it has always been there, constant and reliable. But remove it even briefly, and the illusion of stability vanishes. What remains is a stark reminder that life on Earth depends on a delicate balance of forces, any one of which, if disrupted, can change everything. As the 24 hours finally come to an end, imagine the moment when the Earth begins to spin again. There would be no dramatic announcement, no visible switch flipping in the sky. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the planet would reclaim its ancient motion. But the world it awakens to would not be the same one that existed before the stillness. Too much has been lost. Too much has changed. The return of rotation would bring relief in some places. The sun would begin to move across the sky again, restoring the cycle of day and night. Temperatures would gradually stabilize, and weather systems might slowly reorganize themselves. But relief would come hand in hand with new dangers. Flooded regions could face violent retreating waters. Unstable land masses could collapse. Fragile ecosystems, already pushed beyond their limits, would struggle to adapt once more to a changing environment. For humanity, survival would no longer be the only challenge. Recovery would be the real test. Entire civilizations would have been reshaped by just one day without rotation. Cities would need to be rebuilt in unfamiliar climates. Coastlines would no longer match old maps. Agriculture would have to adapt to altered soil, weather patterns, and water availability. The world would demand a level of cooperation and resilience never before required. And yet, this thought experiment is not just about destruction. It is a reminder of how deeply interconnected we are with the forces of our planet. Earth's rotation is something we never think about, yet it quietly governs the rhythm of our lives. It determines when we wake and sleep, how winds move across continents, how oceans circulate, and how life has evolved over billions of years. Its absence reveals how fragile the systems we depend on truly are. What makes this scenario so unsettling is not only the scale of the disaster, but how invisible the cause is. There is no enemy to fight, no warning to ignore. Just a single change in a natural process that has always been there. It reminds us that Earth is not a static stage for human history, but a dynamic, living system governed by physics far beyond our control. At the same time, this story highlights the resilience of life. Even in the face of planetary catastrophe, some forms of life would endure. Deep beneath the oceans, far from the chaos of the surface, ecosystems might continue largely unaffected. In sheltered environments, pockets of humanity could survive, adapt, and rebuild. Life has endured mass extinctions before, and it would likely do so again. Perhaps the most important lesson of all is perspective. We often imagine threats coming from space, asteroids, black holes, distant cosmic events. But sometimes, the most critical forces are already here, quietly shaping every moment of our existence. Earth's spin is one of those forces. It is constant, reliable, and easy to take for granted. So the next time you watch the sunrise or set, remember that it is not the sun moving around us, but the Earth itself turning through space. A motion so familiar that we forget it is happening at all. And remember that our planet's habitability depends on a delicate balance of forces, any one of which, if disrupted, could change everything we know about life on Earth. In the end, imagining a world where Earth stops spinning for just 24 hours isn't about fear. It's about understanding. Understanding how extraordinary our planet truly is and how rare and fragile the conditions for life can be in the vast, silent universe that surrounds us.